Hello, 8th grade. So, like I said yesterday, today you're having a test. Move my bubble, sorry. So first we're going to view lessons 1 through 13, and then you will go take the test on Edmodo. So lesson 1, we basically looked at just exponential form. So we're just going to work through problems from each lesson like we did for the quiz. So that's how we're going to do this review. So first we have 8 times 8 times 8 times 8 times 8 times 8 times 8 in exponential form. So how many 8s are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're going to write 8 to the 7th. And all the answers are actually on one sheet. So we will wait until we answer all of them and then double check our answers. So write 2 to the 6th in expanded form. Solve it. So we'd write 2 times 2 out with 6 2's. And then solve it. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32, times 2 is 64. And then rewrite the following in exponential form using 4 as the base. So 4 times 4 is 16, so 4 to the 2nd. 4 times 1 is 4. 64 is going to be 4 times 4 is 16, times 4 is 64, so 4 to the 3rd. And 64 times 4 is 256, so 4 to the 4th. We can double check all our answers, and they are correct. All right, so let's move on to lesson 2. So this one we are combining multiplication with numbers in exponential form. So the first one we have 5 to the 2nd times 7 to the 4th times 7 to the 7th times 5 to the 2nd. So remember, they have to have the same base, and then we just add exponents, excuse me. So 5 to the 4th times 7 to the 11th. Here we have a variable, which is just fine. So that means they all have the same base. So 2 times 12 is 24, 7 and 6 is 13. This one we have 4 to the 2nd times 4 to the 5th times 16. We can break 16 down into 4 to the 2nd, so we end up with the final answer of 4 to the 9th. And the last one we cannot combine because the bases are not the same. What about lesson 3? So this one we were multiplying exponents. So 7 to the 2nd to the 6th, 2 times 6 is 12. 3 times 10 is 30. 3 times 9 is 27. And remember, with negatives, it's just going to continue to be negative. But when we write it out, positive exponents are going to have a positive answer. Negative exponents would have a negative 2. So lesson 4, write the number in expanded form using exponential notation. So this is when we also looked at the 0 as a base. So 2 to the 0, or 2 times 10 to the 0. So we have 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. 3, no 2 because there's a 0 there, 1 and 0. This one, write the number out in expanded form, then solve for the answer. 10 to the 3rd, 10 times 10 times 10 times then 1, because anything to the 0 power is 1, is 1,000. Lesson 5, negative exponents. So, sorry, those should not be that way. So then we have 3 times 1 over 10 to the 2nd, which we can simplify to being 3 over 100, because we just make it a not negative exponent by putting it under 1. So 1 over 10 to the 2nd. Here we're flipping, so 8 to the negative 9th. Here we have the same situation, 3 times 1 over 2 to the 4th, 3 times 3 over 2 to the 4th, which end up being 3 to the 16th, and 1 over 5 to the 3rd. Lesson 6, 2 to the 7th equals 128. Lesson 6 was basically just a review of everything we had done at this point. 1 over 5 to the 3rd, or 1 over 125. 4 to the 0 is the 1. 5 times 2 to the 2nd. 5 to the 2nd times 2 to the 2nd equals 25 times 4 equals 100. And a nice big number for this one, 3 to the 3rd to the 4th is 3 to the 12th, or 531,441. Lesson 7. We're looking at finding the number using a negative power of 10. So this one says the chance of you having the same DNA as another person other than an identical twin is approximately 1 in 10 trillion, which is 1 followed by 12 zeros. Add an extra 1 because 10 trillion. Given the fraction expressed as a very small number using a negative power of 10. So 1 over 10 trillion is going to be 1 over 10 to the 13th. And then we just learned, or just reviewed, 10 to the negative 13th then. Lesson 8, there are about 9 billion devices connected to the internet. If a wireless router can support 300, how many wireless routers are necessary to connect all 9 billion devices wirelessly? This one we're looking at dividing. So we first make them scientific notation, 9 times 10 to the 9th and 3 times 10 to the 2nd. Divide it out. We divide 9 by 3 and get 3. 10 to the 9th divided by 10 to the 2nd. Remember, we subtract. So 3 times 10 to the 7th, or 30 million. Lesson 9, we're looking at just writing numbers in scientific notation. So remember, it always has to be a number that is equal to or greater than 1 and less than 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we have 4.07 times 10 to the 11th. And if there's a 0 between two positive integers, you must include that 0. 6.9 times 10 to the 5th, 5.76 times 10 to the 5th, 2.76 times 10 to the 11th, and 2 times 10 to the 9th. So we broke lesson 10 down into 2 parts. The speed of light is 3,800 million meters per second. The sun is approximately 1.5 times 10 to the 11th meters from Earth. How many seconds does it take for sunlight to reach Earth? Remember, we want to always put them in scientific notation first, and then we divide it out. So we get 1.5 over 3, or divided by 3 times 10 to the 11th divided by 10 to the 8th. 1.5 divided by 3 is 0.5. And 10 to the 11th divided by 10 to the 8th is 3, or 10 to the 3rd. But this is not properly in scientific notation. So we take 0.5 times 10 times 10 to the 2nd, and we get 5 times 10 to the 2nd. The mass of the moon is about 7.3 times 10 to the 22nd kilograms. It would take approximately 26 million moons to equal the mass of the sun. What is the mass of the sun? So 7.3 times 10 to the 22nd times 26 million. So again, we always add the exponents when multiplying. 2.6 times 7.3 is 18.98. We must put it in scientific notation, so we end up with a final answer, 1.898 times 10 to the 30th. Part 2 was just more operations. So if we take 3 times 10 to the 2nd times 4, 12 times 10 to the 2nd, again, it must be in scientific notation, so 1.2 times 10 to the 1st. Here we're dividing. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 7 minus 3 is 4. And finally, 2 negatives. So we can divide 8 divided by 4 is 2. And when dividing by a negative or subtracting, negative 3 minus a negative 5 is going to be a positive 2. Lesson 11, we looked at the U.S. national debt rounded to the nearest dollar. I'm not going to read it to you. According to the U.S. Census, there are about that many U.S. citizens. What is each citizen's approximate share of the debt? So first write them in scientific notation, which I gave them here. So we're dividing it out to find out what each citizen's share is. So we divide our numbers. It would be 0.5336 times 10 to the 5th, or about $53,360 per citizen. 12, we looked at finding or choosing units. So the table shows an approximation of the U.S. national debt at the beginning of each decade. Which unit would you use to measure it? And then rewrite using your chosen unit for these 4 years. So here is your chart. I chose 10 to the 11th. So this would be whatever your answer is. But so I have 0.021 times 10 to the 11th, and so on. So, and then this is yesterday's lesson. So we are comparing numbers written in scientific notation. They have the same exponent. So 9.3 is greater than 9.2879. So then 9.3 times 10 to the 28th is greater than 9.2879 times 10 to the 28th. And then we know Chris is correct with his answer, wrong with his reasoning. We need to look at whether or not the number is smaller or bigger, because the number of digits will not always work. So that's your really, really quick review. If you have questions on a certain lesson or just in general, please let me know. Otherwise, go ahead and do your assignment. The test on Edmodo, it's due tomorrow, Thursday.